I think at some point we all have to have a moment where we look in the mirror and we decide, where do I go? I can tell you 100% certainty that saved my life, because my mindset was essentially walking into that hotel wondering how strong the coat hangers were.
Yeah.
But that was a night where my friends met me and they just said, this is not you. You're better than this. We love you, but we don't accept this version of you.
Yeah.
And I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I was drinking way too much. I was miserable. And that was the first night where my friends stepped up and just said, you're better. Let's figure out how to get you there. Let's figure out how to get you to see it. And a week or two later, I jumped into 75 hard. And the first night I went to bed on that, I realized I have not gone to bed without a glass of whiskey in probably 6 years. The world is in such need right now of like-minded men who can help pull each other up. It's led to way too many men feeling like they can't talk about any of their issues, to feel like vulnerability is somehow a weakness.
Nick, my brother, thanks for being here.
Tyler, good to see you, man.
I feel like I've known you for longer than I have. We've known each other like a week officially, but like for some reason, I just feel this brotherly connection. I don't know if that's normal for you. Is that normal for you?
Oh yeah. I have there are different guys that I feel like I can connect with quicker than others. I have my own opinions on why that is sometimes. But you and I, like, from the get-go, is like, oh, this guy speaks my language.
Yeah. Amazing. I want to start out with a question that's going to get us pulled right in.
Shoot.
Okay. And this question may surprise you that I know this, but I want to ask you how you learned to love your father, who you had a tough relationship with.
Ooh. This goes back to my mission. And I have shared this story on my own podcast, but this is the roller coaster. So let's give you the version. So I grew up in the LDS church, and I served a mission to St. Petersburg, Russia. Growing up, my relationship with my father was difficult. My parents were divorced when I was 16. And I think, like most teenagers, especially teenagers who end up living full-time with their mom and their parents go through a divorce, you kind of pick one. You pick one that you throw all the anger and hurt and frustration at. And for me, that was my dad. And I'm very careful now to put any blame on either of the parents, because especially having gone through my own divorce, I know it's never ever a one-sided thing. And so I've had to go and apologize to him for putting a lot of that on him in those years. But you fast forward through to my mission. So for 3, almost 4 years, he and I we just butted heads. There were times when we wouldn't talk for months on end. And I left on a mission, and I was pretty convinced that I wouldn't hear from him much. That it would be kind of very sporadic communication. And he was the only person who wrote me every week. Back when I served, this was from 2001 to 2003, we got to go to an internet cafe once a week and read the letters that had come in through email. And even mom missed a couple times here and there. Not a lot. She did pretty good. But he was the only one, never missed a single week. And I'm a year into my mission, and that was kind of like messing with me. It was affecting my own understanding of what our relationship was. And I remember one morning doing some personal study, and I had this thought come to mind where I thought, the only thing that God really requires of us, or asks us here on earth, is just do our best. That's it. Just do your best. And I think where that becomes really difficult when we're looking at other people is your best, Tyler's best, is completely different from mine. And Dakota's best is completely different from mine. Jimmy Rex's best is completely different. And the only person who knows what that number looks like is you and God. And so I all of a sudden just got hit with this realization of, holy shit, what if my dad was just doing his best the whole time? Like, what if his best included the struggles that we had and the problems that he had in his marriage with my mom? And what if his best was there? Then just me not accepting him where he was at and judging him is already like, I'm a little bit lower. I'm not doing my best if I can't accept that. Yeah. And I explain this to people, and when I do, I immediately get this a little bit of pushback, because I think the initial reaction is, well, yeah, but there's consequences for behavior. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, there are absolutely consequences for bad behavior, 1,000%. However, if you are doing your best, I truly believe that is what God wants us to do here on the earth. And nobody knows. And so for me, the very best way to accept people and to love people is assume they're doing the best. And I started doing that with my dad. I started just saying, you know what? All that shit that I was upset about that was making me angry, that's gone. That's gone. I'm just going to assume he's doing his best. And as soon as I did that, like, this wall just broke down, where I was able to let go of so much that I was angry for. And it's opened up my entire world and how I look at and treat and accept people in my own life. Because, and I'm not perfect at it, but I try with just about everybody to just assume they're doing the best they can. And it makes it a lot easier to love somebody when you do that.
Great story. One of the things that we often hear is, in order to love somebody deeply, first you have to love yourself, right? So in addition to giving people the benefit of the doubt that they're doing their best, do you also subscribe to the idea that you can't love somebody fully until you first love yourself?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and that has come so hard at me in just the last couple of years. As I've gone through a lot of growth and work to accept me and love me, that has allowed me to even further expand my love for the other people in my life. And it was a miss, you know. You spend 40 years of your life not really paying attention to yourself and just putting everything out to everybody else. And you realize when you do, you're like, oh my gosh, I had so much more. I had so much more if I could have just loved me.
How does one get there, right? I think a lot of us, and I say us because I struggle with this from time to time. I know you do too. Mm-hmm. We all do. But how do you get there? What's the unlock to truly being able to love who you are?
I think at some point we all have to have a moment where we look in the mirror and we decide, where do I go? And a lot of people, this is their rock bottom. I'm not saying that everybody needs a rock bottom moment in their life, but everybody needs a moment in their life where they say, okay, I don't like what I'm seeing, or I do. What do I have to do to love this person in the mirror? And then you have to go do those things. You have to get silly with it sometimes, where you're writing notes to yourself in your house, or you're looking in the mirror and telling yourself you love yourself, where you're really focusing on positive self-talk and not putting yourself down. a massive part of this is bringing yourself into integrity and into alignment. So my therapist, Jed Thorpe, who I shout out on almost every podcast because he's amazing, taught me that we're all good. Like humanity by and large is all pretty great. And every time I travel somewhere, that just gets reaffirmed to me. And all of us have this center that we know and that we vibe with, and that is our frequency that we know we're good.
Yeah.
And when we start to get angry or depressed or upset or feel off, it's usually because we're doing things that are not in line with that center. And so a huge part of being able to love yourself is putting away those things that are out of alignment with who we are at our center. So I was never able to love myself, for example, until I was willing to be in a relationship that was honest. I was never able to love myself until I was willing to recognize the defects I had in health and in eating and in dieting and in drinking. And until I started bringing all of those things into alignment and back to center, it was hard to love myself.
Thank you to our sponsors over at Bucked Up. I love this company. I love their products, their apparel, and their supplements. Recently, they dropped the mother of all pre-workouts, Mother Bucker. This is not for the faint of heart. This will make you want to claw your face off. So don't get stuck in traffic when you're headed to the gym. I love these guys. I love this company, and I love their products. They are clearly the best tasting pre-workout on the entire market, and they're number one for a reason. Bucked Up is my favorite workout brand, hands down. And they also have my favorite apparel for working out and just for daily life. It's Lululemon-like quality, but for a fraction of the price that's affordable. So head over to their site, buckedup.com, where you can check it out. And for 20% off their entire site, use the code TylerHall20. You have a tattoo that says, it's good to be Nick, which is awesome.
Oh, it sounds like the world's douchiest tattoo, unless you know the story.
I want to hear the story. I bet it's a good one.
It is. And I love to tell it. So about a year and a half ago, I came out of a difficult relationship. And I'm very, very calculating when I say it was a toxic relationship, but please understand that it was toxic because of me. I brought the toxicity into that relationship. I didn't escape from some horrible thing that was not my doing.
Yeah.
It was all me. But coming out of it was very difficult for me. It was very difficult for my kids. This was a relationship where we had lived together for almost 3 years. She had her own children that had lived with us, and So to my kids, it felt like another divorce. And to me, it felt like another divorce. And I started spiraling down this really self-loathing staircase of just feeling like this is all my fault. Like, and I knew the things I had done to make it my fault, but I also just started everything that was going wrong. I was just blaming me. My kids were struggling. That was my fault. These other kids were hurt. That was my fault. Like everything was on me. And I just really, really low. And I had some friends who reached out and basically just said, you're not going to go down this spiral. Like, we're here for you. Jimmy Rex was one of those people. And another one of those friends, buddy of mine named Dan Simpson. Not a lot of people know Dan, but the ones who do, like, Dan is a gem here in Utah. He is a brilliant networker. He's a brilliant deal developer. People say, what does Dan do? He's one of those guys who just puts deals together. And he's an expert in just about everything he jumps into, and is one of those guys that everything he touches turns to gold. And on top of that, he's just a good freaking human being, like salt of the earth, good person. And so Dan knew I was struggling and that I was having a rough time. And for about a month straight, Dan would call me every day. And he would ask me one question. He'd ask me, is it good to be Nick? And at the start of this, like, I kind of would laugh at him. I'm like, no, Dan, you know what I'm going through. No, it's not great to be Nick right now. Yeah. It kind of sucks. And he would spend time on the phone with me, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, whatever it took. And he would tell me all of the reasons that it was good to be Nick. And he wouldn't hang up until I was convinced, okay, life's not as bad as I'm making it, as bad as I'm feeling. Like, yeah, it's pretty good to be Nick. And he's been a month doing that. And I had been toying with the idea of a tattoo for a while. And like, I've always loved tattoos, but I also could never be like Pete Davidson with or not. Who's the guy with just meaningless Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran just has like a bunch of like, he's got like McDonald's logos and just weird random crap all over. And so for me, I was like, yes, I want a tattoo, but it's got to mean something. It's got to be a very personal, deep meaning. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm going to put in quotes, it's good to be Nick, and I'm going to have Dan Simpson's signature tattooed right under it. So I reached out to him one day and said, hey, man, I need a picture of your signature. No questions asked, has no idea if I'm stealing his identity or what I'm doing, but just sends me a picture of his signature. And I was in Newport Beach with Haley, who's my current partner. And she was like, dude, we're doing this tattoo. And Haley has a lot of tattoos. And so she was also a big help where she's like, okay, we're doing this. I know you've been wanting this. I know you're not going to set up the appointment. So while you're at your work meetings, I'm going to go find us a shop and we're getting this thing done. I'm like, okay, let's go. And we did. We went in that night and I'm getting this tattoo, and it's this cool like Asian dude from Newport, very typical like Newport dude. And he's tattooing this on my arm, and we're like halfway through before I finally tell him the story. And he goes, oh, thank God, man. This is the douchiest tattoo I've ever heard of until you told me this story. Yeah. Wow. It's like, that's not bad, actually. So for me, it's always been a reminder of that it is good to be Nick, and that no matter what, I don't have to spiral. I don't have to go down that path of just like deep depression and misery. It's pretty good to be me. Good life.
Great story. There's something you mentioned there, which was you had some friends that did an intervention. That I think is one of the hardest things to do, because we have this fear that if we're the friend doing the intervention, that our friend is going to be rubbed the wrong way, that they're going to be closed off to it, that it's going to somehow hurt the relationship. There's actually a friend currently in my life right now that I feel needs an intervention. And I've been fearful to do it. Okay. So what would you say about friend interventions? Are they warranted? Are they the right thing? How do you approach it the right way? I'd love your perspective on this.
So I've had 2 experiences with friend intervention, which is interesting here. And first of all, yes, if you're feeling that prompting, if you're feeling that calling that your friend needs you, do it. Just do it. Be prepared for whatever response you may get.
Yeah.
And be prepared to just love him wherever he or she is. So this first one was immediately after this breakup. I called Jimmy and said, "Hey, listen, I broke up with this person, and I'm gonna need a place to stay for month to month for a few months until we can sort out her moving out." And because we were in a house that I owned, and I didn't want to just kick her out. And so I said, I need a place to stay while they get sorted out. And he said, yeah, that sounds good. I got a place downtown. No big deal. I said, where are you going tonight? I said, I got a hotel downtown. I'll be fine. And he's just like hell you will. So just come down. He's like, I'm home watching basketball. Come to Orem right now. Our buddy Ben is in town. We'll get him. We'll go to dinner. You are not going to a hotel room alone tonight. And I can tell you 100% certainty that saved my life. That saved my life that night, because my mindset was essentially walking into that hotel wondering how strong the coat hangers were.
Yeah.
And it was done in such a loving way by friends who knew that I was struggling and needed them. And I think depending on what the situation is, it looks different, right? Like an intervention for me in that moment looks very different from an intervention for somebody who's like spiraling with alcohol or drug abuse.
Yeah.
Those types of interventions look very different. But that was a night where my friends met me in a place of love, and they just said, this is not you. You're better than this. We love you, but we don't accept this version of you. Yeah. And I was 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I was drinking way too much. I was miserable. And that was the first night where my friends stepped up and just said, you're better. Let's figure out how to get you there. Let's figure out how to get you to see it. Second intervention was actually kind of before that. I had a buddy who he lives out in New York, and his name's Cameron, and he came out to Utah. Jimmy was having his 40th birthday party, and there's a bunch of dudes out in the desert for a couple days for his 40th. And my buddy Cameron shows up, and we're talking, and he's asking how life is, and he's like, dude, I've been listening to you this weekend, and I just feel like you've got a drinking problem. And I was like, no, I'm good. And remember, this is like, I'm 60 pounds overweight, and I was drinking on the trip. I mean, we were having dinner and drinks with dinner, and he's like, dude, I can see that on you. Like, I want to help you. And I kind of brushed him off. And months later, after this breakup, Cameron's back in town, and same thing again. And this time I'm kind of pissed. And I'm kind of like telling my other buddies, I'm like, God, freaking Cameron's over here thinking I'm an alcoholic and wants to like wheel me off to intervention and like put me in a inpatient treatment clinic for a month. Like, this is ridiculous. And again, it was friends that were not accusatory. It was friends that were very loving, and everything from a place of love. They said, okay, we hear you. Tell us the reasons you think you don't need this. And I gave them my reasons. My reasons were, I do not wake up and drink. I do not drink at work. I do not feel like I'm craving a drink at work. It has never once inhibited my ability to get up and go operate on a very high level. But I do recognize that I have some bad habits associated with it. I go home from work and I do start to drink, and it's probably more than it should be.
Yeah.
And so I said, I feel like I'm not over that ledge, but I also recognize what Cameron is seeing. And they said, okay, that's a happy medium that we can come to. And Cameron was like, okay, so maybe we don't need to do this like inpatient thing, but how can we make healthier habits? What can we do? And about a week or two later, I think we left that with me just saying, hey, I just like, love me here where I'm at. I'm okay. And he said, okay, but I want you to look at something healthier if you can. And a week or two later, I jumped into 75 hard. And the first night I went to bed on that, I realized I have not gone to bed without a glass of whiskey in probably 6 years. And I had this moment where I was like, oh shit, like he might be right. I might wake up tomorrow in full blown DTs and alcohol withdrawal and be going to the hospital. And so the next day I wake up, I'm good, feel fine. And first thing I think is, whew, I'm not an alcoholic. And the alcohol thing became the easiest thing to do on 75 hard. I thought it was gonna be one of the hardest things for me, but it was a piece of cake. And I learned though what my unhealthy behaviors were around it.
Yeah.
And then we were just talking as I walked in. I'm currently on like a little 50-day reset where just good to show myself that it's not a need. And I had noticed my metabolism just kind of plateauing, and I was trying to lean out and get my health goals into an even higher level, and it just wasn't happening. And honestly, just it's booze. And so I don't think that I'm at a level where I would ever say, okay, I'm done forever. But I definitely know where I can and where I can't, and what that needs to look like.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol is the worst drug in the world, hands
Absolutely.
down. Right. I mean, people talk about some of these hardcore narcotics like heroin and all of its sister narcotics. And I'm like, no, alcohol is much worse. Right. The friend intervention thing, man, I think it's really powerful. And I think the thing that you said about just if you have that feeling and that intuition to say something to a friend and have that intervention, you do it out of a place of love. It's always going to be the right thing to do, but brace yourself for how they're going to react, because they may take it the right way, it may be the wrong way. And, but I love that. One thing that I spent a lot of time talking about as of late, it's a concept that, I've kind of developed through some deep introspection, is this idea of circle management, meaning who do you allow into the circle, who stays in the circle, and who is supposed to go out of the circle.
Yeah.
And what is your criteria for who gets to be in that circle? And when I talk about a circle, I actually refer to it as the sacred circle, which is the very inner circle of a few people that have made it into there, right? And we kind of have like multiple circles, right? You might have a tier 2 and a tier 3, but I'm talking about that really deep, sacred inner circle. What is your criteria for allowing somebody in to your inner circle? What does it take?
Phenomenal question. Because one thing I will say is that inner circle can change.
Should change.
Should, absolutely. As we grow and expand, and relationships come and go, and there's an ebb and flow to relationships. And that's not to say that as soon as you've grown, you push somebody out of your life, but maybe they've served that purpose and they now go to like one of the outer circles. Yeah. But I definitely do have a few people in my life who are just in that inner circle.
Let's use one example. I want you to pick one that's been in there for a while, that's still in there.
For sure. Jimmy Rex has been one of my closest friends since 6th grade. And he and I have had our own ebbs and flows, but he has always been there for me. And he knows that I would be there for him in a heartbeat. So one thing that has separated him from other people in my life is that ability to love me and also expect more from me. Jimmy is somebody who will never let you settle. And he will always question what you're doing if he feels like you're more. And so that is a criteria for me. Like that close circle has to be somebody that you can love, but you also don't have to accept them for who they are. You can want more from them, and you should be able to tell them that they can be more.
Yeah. Really interesting. Mm-hmm. So I want to frame another question around this, which is I've actually started thinking about this more on a scientific level, which is when I think about requirements, the foundation of a sacred inner circle is a mutual value creation. Mm-hmm. So the people in my circle create value for me, and I create value for them. Value can be broken down in numerous ways, mm-hmm. right? It could be the way that they make you feel. It could be the way they talk to you. It could be this person is a financial, relationship of some sort. They make you happy. You like to spend time with them and do certain activities, right? So there's all these different things that I think about. And then there's like sort of a rubric, like, okay, what value is this person creating for me? And am I reciprocating that? Because it's not just my choice who's in the circle.
Yeah.
It's also the circle's choice.
Absolutely.
They get to choose if they want to leave.
Yeah.
Which means that I have to always be on my game, and I have to understand, what do you need from me? And what value am I bringing to you? Mm-hmm. And am I still bringing that value? And is this chapter closed, or is it still going? Are we still writing the book together, right? So, what are some of the things that for you are, as you think about your sacred inner circle, what are some of the things that the people in your circle do to create value?
Let's stick with Jimmy here, just because we're talking about that. And it'll be confusing to jump from example to example. But value that Jimmy creates for me in my life. When I was a resident, and I was going through plastic surgery residency training in Texas, I looked at a lot of different options for where I wanted my career to go. And I looked at whether I wanted to be an academic plastic surgeon and go off to a prestigious university and write papers and make a name for myself in the world of plastic surgery. I looked at private practice. I looked at hand surgery and on all these different options. And honestly, the one of the few things that always kept coming back to me was, I need to go back to Utah. I need to put up a sign. And I know that my friend Jimmy is one of the most well-connected, networked people out there. I will immediately have access to all of that just by my association and friendship with him. And that is something that I know he's very proud of, and is one of his greatest gifts in life, is to share that network with people. Yeah. I mean, some of my closest friends in this world were introduced to me by Jimmy Rex.
I mean, the reason we're on this podcast
is 1,000%. Absolutely. So the value that he brings me is tremendous. Yeah. And so for me, I try to give back. I think one of the best things you can do to bring value to your friendships is to basically pay forward what they've given you. Yeah. And so now I love doing what Jimmy loves. I love sharing my own knowledge on a podcast, just like you're doing. I love sharing my own network with people. Yeah. One of my closest friends, Mark McCormack, joined
Prez,
good old Prez, joined We're the They because I said, this is something that you need to do. And he still holds on to this very egotistical story, which is he only joined for me. But I think it's been hugely beneficial for both of us. And I'm very proud of the fact that that's like one of the few relationships that I brought Jimmy. Yeah. And so I'm kind of like, this one was me. Yeah. I know you've given me a lot, but this one's a pretty damn good one. And this one was me. And so really that paying forward what they give you is a huge thing. Yeah. And then using your own gifts and sharing what you have with them is how you love them and pay them back. Yeah. We operated on Jimmy last week, and I, not violating HIPAA, he's talked about that openly and on social media, and like the joy to be able to share my gift with somebody so close to me is amazing. I mean, that was one of the best days for me. The honor to be able to actually operate on a friend of mine.
It's amazing. One of my closest friends is an orthodontist, and anytime I have a tooth need, like recently, the bottoms of my front teeth were kind of getting a little chippy, a little jagged. Mm-hmm. He's like, dude, come in right after hours tomorrow. I went in, he smoothed them out, he cleaned them up, and just like, it's awesome. And I provide a different sort of value to him, like you said, and it's really a beautiful thing. You talked about a couple things. I want to talk about Watt for sure, but some people refer to you as Nick, and some people refer to you as Dr. Howland, because you are a plastic surgeon. I have a lot of questions about this.
Bring them on.
Specifically, anytime somebody's operating on, women and doing breast implants and these sort of things, it's always like, I wonder how that is. That's really interesting. Mm-hmm. But I guess just generally, why did you choose to be a plastic surgeon? And was the reason you chose to do it initially different than the reason why you're passionate about doing it today?
Absolutely. So in one word, why did I choose plastic surgery? ADD, which, let me explain. I knew forever I wanted to be a doctor. And I think part of that was growing up when we did like doctor, lawyer, those were like the prestigious careers, right? Yeah. I mean, God, if I'd have known what entrepreneurship could do or jumping into a hedge fund, I'd have been all over that. But I always wanted to be a doctor, like from the time I was a kid. And my dad runs a very successful commercial real estate company, and I was the oldest of 4 sons, and that was always supposed to go to me. And so Jimmy and I actually got our real estate licenses together at Stringham, and I went on to work for my dad. He went on to do what he's done in real estate. And all through undergrad, I did commercial real estate, and I hated it. Every second of it was terrible. And when I finally finished all of my pre-med course and undergrad work and told my dad I'm going to medical school, he looked at me and he says, "You're an idiot, and I'm not paying for that. There's a lot better ways to make money," which turns out he's right. And also, him not paying for it was one of the best gifts he could have ever given me.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. And so I went on and started getting to medical school and looking at what I wanted to do. And I kind of knew I wanted to be in the surgery field. I didn't know where. I didn't know what area of surgery, but surgery felt right. And so I started following around some different surgeons. My ex-wife's cousin was an orthopedic surgeon, and I went and watched him, and he did like 10 ACL repairs in a few days. And by the third one, I was like, this is the most boring thing in the world. You do the same shit every day. And I went and followed her uncle, who happened to be a bariatric surgeon. And I watched him do about 10 gastric bypasses. And again, by the third one, I'm like, oh, it's the same thing every day. I don't think I could do this. And I had this crisis where I was like, maybe surgery's not for me. Like, this is just the same thing every single day. I don't think I could do this. And it wasn't until I found plastic surgery that all of a sudden it clicked. It fed that other side of my brain that was like the artistic side. And I could do 10 breast augmentations in a day, and every single one of them would be so completely different from the other that it keeps that ADD in check, which is why I say ADD is what took me to plastic surgery. But your follow-up question to that is that the reason I've stayed is so profound? Because no, like I have truly found my calling in life. Like, I'm so happy to be in a career that I wake up to and love every day. And because I know a lot of people don't have that. And as I have learned more about plastic surgery and fallen more in love with plastic surgery, I've realized that I feel like my mission in life is to take away the shame that we've associated as a society with plastic surgery. We have heaped so much shame on this field, both the people getting it and the people performing it, that it's almost hard to look at without those lenses on of, you know, people like the Kardashians or J-Lo, or just like these ridiculous over the top plastic surgery procedures. And I remember in residency, my mom would call me almost daily, and she would ask me, she's like, did you do good plastic surgery today, or did you do the bad plastic surgery today? And in her mind, if I was doing cleft lips and palates and burn reconstruction, I was saving the world. I was doing good plastic surgery. But if I was doing breast augmentations and tummy tucks, I was somehow not. And my experiences weren't jiving with that, because I had seen somebody's life change from just as dramatically from a cleft lip for some kid in Guatemala to a breast augmentation for a 20-year-old in Texas. And that sounds like a really not good comparison, but in terms of like life changed, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen a woman completely reclaim her femininity just from a breast augmentation, and completely turn around her life. And so for me, plastic surgery has zero to do with vanity when it's done for the right reason. And I think it's one of the most self-empowering things that you can do for yourself, again, when it's done for the right reasons. And so that's my platform. And from a business perspective, like having a plastic surgeon tell you don't need plastic surgery is probably a really shitty business position to be in. But it sure makes me feel good about going to work, and it sure makes me feel good about the work that I do. Yeah. I turn more people away than I accept, because if I feel like you're in it for the wrong reason, or your expectations are off, or it's for somebody else, just say, sorry, maybe we don't work well together.
What would the wrong reason be?
People doing it for a husband or for a boyfriend, or There are cases of body dysmorphia out there. They're rare, but they exist. It's people who are just never, ever going to be happy no matter what you do. And so those are, you've got to train yourself and learn to speak to people and to listen to people and know why they're doing it.
Let me ask you this though. Is that a bad reason? Because you want to impress your boyfriend, husband?
Not necessarily. Yeah, that's good. I mean,
right?
Yeah, you push back on me a little bit with that. No, I think if your sole purpose is to, if you're comfortable with you and you're like, hey, I just want to do something that empowers us both or that they're happy with, I don't think there's a problem with that.
But I think there is a nuance there, which is what you're referring to, which is if you're being sort of forced to do it, you don't want to do it, your husband's saying you got to go do it,
then there's
versus I want to do this because I want to look good for my husband and I know he wants that as well. There's a nuance there for sure, right? That one is a very pure motive and maybe not very pure, but it's pure enough versus one that's not. Right?
Exactly. And that's why I put that caveat in there. If you're good with you, then yeah.
Let's wrap by talking about We're the They. This now has come up 3 or 4 times on the show because I've interviewed Cody Broderick, I've interviewed Jimmy, and now you. You know, this is a program that regrettably I am still not a part of. Jimmy and I have talked about it.
Why aren't you in group 4?
I've thought about it. It's actually a really good question. You know, I formed a group recently, myself in Arizona.
Nice.
It's a small group. It's other friends at a similar life stage. Nothing like We Are the They, right? It's more of a sort of mastermind roundtable where we get together once a month and we sit down. We have a very intimate, private discussion, and now we do activities and things like that together. So for me, it's really become about time and the fact that I don't live in Utah.
Yeah.
To me is like, if I was here, I think it'd be a no-brainer. The fact that I'm in Arizona and I already travel enough and I'm getting ready to have my 4th kid, I'm like, do I need to add one more thing? And for me, it's been no up to this point. So, but I'm a huge advocate for it. Anybody that talks about coaching or being a part of a community, I always send them to We Are the They. I tell them to check it out. So let's talk about it. Why has this been such a important component in your life since you joined a year or so ago?
For me, it's been the community of men that this is. And I had friends going into this. I had a lot of friends going into this. But I think the world is in such need right now of like-minded men who can help pull each other up.
Yeah.
For generations, this idea of the masculine being just bear down, knuckle up and do it is good and bad, right? Like it's raised a lot of strong men, but it's also buried under the rug a lot of stuff that shouldn't have been buried under the rug.
Yeah.
And it's led to way too many men feeling like they can't talk about any of their issues, to feel like vulnerability is somehow a weakness. And you can see the movement happening. I mean, just scroll through Instagram one day.
Yep.
And you'll see more and more people talking about vulnerability as a superpower. Vulnerability is not a weakness. And having a group of men who can lift each other up and then go out and lift their community up because they've lifted themselves up. And for me, that's really what it was. Like, I started doing a lot of the work that we do in We Are the They 3-4 months before, just because of how life had kind of worked out. This breakup that I had and then friends intervening and me jumping on 75 Hard, that all came a few months before We Are the They started. And it was kind of awesome to come into the group having some of this momentum. Like, we're talking about stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the stuff I'm starting to work on and do right away. And having guys jumping into that as well has been really amazing.
Is there a moment or experience that you want to share with the audience that was life-changing about this community?
Oh God, there's so many. First of all, I mean, if you're on the fence at all, like, this is such a good community to be a part of. Like, just jump in. For me, one of the most powerful moments that I had in this group is Jimmy starts, you do, when you're in the leadership groups, every quarter do what's called a ludus, which is like a weekend retreat. Ludus is basically where the gladiators would train. And so that's why he calls it a ludus. And so for a few days, it's all guys together, and there's usually some sort of topic that we're discussing and something crazy that we're doing. And it's all about kind of bonding and building these relationships and making men better. And the very first one you do is down in Moab, and everybody goes off of this big rope swing, and it's a life-changing weekend. One of the exercises that we do during that weekend is something called the circle. And Jimmy will have all 50 guys in a circle in a room, and Jimmy will be in the middle of the room, and he's got a list of questions that he reads out. And if your answer to that question is a yes, you step foot into the circle. So these questions are things like, have you ever been to prison? Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever had somebody die from cancer? Have you ever cheated? Have you ever been cheated on? Have you ever been broke? Have you ever made more than $1 million in a year? And all of the questions are designed to help you see that nothing that you feel like you're going through and is the worst thing in the world, almost never are we alone. And so one of those questions will be, have you ever thought about committing suicide? Have you ever attempted committing suicide? And by the end of that exercise, I mean, guys are just sobbing because and he doesn't tell you like what the exercise is supposed to do. It's just this, we talk about it at the end, but you see men who you immediately judge based on their appearance or their job or what they have, and you immediately think there's no way this guy has the struggles that I do. And then when you see that guy step into the circle on something that you also have struggled with, you immediately break down that wall that you had put up of judgment, and you realize we're the same. Yeah. And for me, that particular exercise was so powerful because I felt like, oh my gosh, I should just stay in this circle because I'm walking in on every one of these damn questions. Yeah. And that has become such a life-changing exercise for me, because during the exercises, I'm stepping into the circle for every question. I'm just like, it's like feeling like you've failed, right? Every time you have to step in the circle, oh my God, yeah, me, yep, me, yes, me. And so when we're doing the exercise, my thoughts were, I can't believe all this shit that I've done or been through. This is ridiculous. And now I look back and I am so proud of all of those things. I'm so grateful for all of those things, because every one of those steps into the circle have let me connect with a different guy in the group or a different person in my life on a level that other people maybe can't. Yeah. Because I can have real empathy for somebody who's cheated. Yeah. I can have real empathy for somebody who's been cheated on. I can have real empathy for somebody who's been broke. And it's all of those things that we oftentimes consider the worst thing in our life or the worst thing that's ever happened, with a little bit of perspective shift, there's some of the things that we can become the most grateful for because they make us who we are.
Yeah. Amen. Well said, Nick, Dr. Howland. It's good to be you. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's good to be Tyler.
This was a pleasure. I agree. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.